If you're anything like me, the Four Nations Face-Off pumped you up for the second half of hockey season. The Vegas Golden Knights sit at the top of the standings in the Western Conference Pacific Division with 74 points. Only 3 teams in the NHL have more points as VGK set up for another cup run. Let's see what the panel has to say. Sin City Beat starts right now.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Hello and welcome to Sin City Beat. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. I'm Mike Davis. Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters and storytellers leading the charge. Joining the action on today's show, Case Kiefer, assistant sports editor of the Las Vegas Sun, Ray Brewer, managing editor of the Las Vegas Sun, and yes, Jack Williams, sports reporter with the Las Vegas Sun. It's a Las Vegas Sun party here on Sin City Beat. So let's dive right in. The Four Nations Face-Off was a major success for the sport of hockey. The final between the U.S. and Canada marked the largest audience for a hockey game on ESPN. The overtime thriller had 10.4 million viewers at its peak. Sportsnet, which broadcasts the game in Canada, reported 10.7 million viewers. So Ray Brewer, did you anticipate the Four Nations Face-Off having this large of an impact?
So I didn't know what kind of hockey we would see because we were so programmed in all-star games, right? The NFL's flag football game. The NBA turns out to be a half-court shooting contest.
Right.
So I didn't realize how passionate these players would be, but it makes sense. You're out there, you're representing your country, your sweater's got USA or Canada or Sweden or whatever it may be. And then it was just so intense that average viewers like myself, I'm not like a hockey savant like Jack and Case, I wanted to watch in because are there going to be a fight between Canada and USA? And it was just an awesome, awesome display of great sports. I love when folks represent the nations that they live in.
It was evident from the get-go. I mean, these were guys, players who are, passionate about playing for their country. Look, I mean, the fighting was evident right from the start. That's 1958. It's it's before the game's even starting. I mean, that's the kind of intensity. Jack, you're a hockey player yourself. Here's my question for you, because you do know the sport intimately. Are hockey guys just wired differently? Whereas even if the NBA went to an all-star game where it was, international versus the U.S., are basketball guys and hockey guys just wired differently and there's always going to be a different sentiment and approach to the game?
I mean, there's such a passion and just intensity coming out and just in this aspect of the game, talk about having such a big representation for your country and stuff like that. And between the United States and Canada, these two just don't like each other at all when it comes to what's been happening on the ice. And it's been such a long time since the United States has faced off in Canada in a best-on-best. It's been forever since the United States beat Canada. So from my perspective, if I ever got the chance in the hockey players' perspective to play and represent the United States on this level, yeah, the passion would be there completely, getting out there, wanting to just exert as much. One of the reasons I think they fought right in the beginning of the game there is they wanted to make a statement showing, hey, we're not messing around. They ended up winning that first game. Unfortunately, they ended up losing the championship game the United States did. But I mean, the passions here. These guys have been starved to represent their countries in a best-on-best tournament. That championship game was the first time that the U.S. played in the U.S. representing their own country. I jumped up my words a little bit there, but the 2002 Olympics was the last time the U.S. played on home soil. So, I mean, there was so much passion and heart in this, and, it meant a lot for these guys. And I'm not surprised that it really capped off the way it did.
What did the success of this mean to you?
Yeah, I think Jack hit on something really key there that sticks with me. Is that the players were starved to do this, the fans were starved. Everyone wanted to see this happen except the NHL. So I'm a little taken aback now when the NHL is getting so much applause. Oh, they put this on. Yeah, I'm glad they did it, but it took so long because I get it. There's so much money. They didn't want to put the players, put extra miles on them, make this happen. I think we need to just pump a little bit of the brakes on the NHL getting so much plaudits for this because it was them that held this back for so long for coming. But unmitigated success. I agree with all you guys. Loved watching it. And the good thing now is it does seem like the NHL has kind of been broken down. The players are getting their way. We're going to get a lot more tournaments like this. We've got the World Cup coming up, I think, every 4 years. Jack could correct me if I'm wrong, the Olympics next year. So this is just the beginning, and I think it's going to be something that's going to captivate audiences for years to come.
Ray, and the rest of the panel, I mean, the financial component to this. You got guys like Connor McDavid, the stars of the league, are on center stage participating in this, putting their bodies on the line. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the cost of that with Shea Theodore and things like that and how it affects, VGK here in Vegas. But, it's fascinating, the financial component to this. I mean, Connor McDavid, what he's making as opposed to some of these NBA guys who are maybe the third best player on their team, he's still making more than the face of the NHL. So where do you think the financial component comes into the competitive juices that these players are participating when it comes to the NBA and NHL respectively?
And that's the beauty of this tournament. It wasn't about a bonus for winning or I make more than you. It was about I'm out here representing my country, my hometown, the guys I grew up skating with, and all the financial part is out of it. And maybe that's why people liked it so much, that folks were out there competing for one sole reason, to represent their country and to show that we have the best hockey here in the United States or Canada or Sweden or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So who cares about the money, in my opinion? It's Connor McDavid and the last guy on the last roster. We're all equal. We're all fighting for the same cause.
Yeah, it's a good point. All right, guys. Well, the success of the Four Nations face-off comes at a cost for VGK. Coming up, we're breaking down the injury to Shea Theodore and more. Stick around.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
Well, there's two sides to every coin, yin and yang, or yang and yin. I bet you never heard that before, Ray Brewer. With the good comes the bad, and the bad comes the good. Just depends on how you look at it. Well, the Four Nations face-off was a great success, but the Golden Knights did take a devastating blow from the event. Star defenseman Shea Theodore suited up for Team Canada and ultimately injured his hand and wrist in the game versus Sweden. Now, Theodore didn't play the rest of the tournament, and ESPN's Emily Kaplan has now reported that Shea Theodore has a broken wrist, and there's a chance he could be out until the playoffs. So, Case, pride for one's nation comes at a big cost for VGK, but how big of a loss is this going to be for the Golden Knights as they gear up for the postseason?
I mean, I should preface by saying you never want to see anyone hurt. I hope Shea Theodore, his wrist isn't too bad, that he's getting the best help he can or whatever. But I honestly think VGK is going to be just fine. Now, that feels weird to say when he's clearly been their second best player this season in my mind. Their best blue liner, leads, I think, on time on ice. But what does this do? This kind of works out for the Golden Knights the way the whole rest of the league hates. All season we've been talking, what are they going to do at the trade deadline? What are they going to do at the trade deadline? Now, what do you know? Shea Theodore out to the playoffs. It's going to be easier to make a move at the trade deadline. They're so deep defensively that I think they can absorb this loss. Maybe if it was a different roster setup, it would hurt more. So, you're going to see a little bit of a decline here without Shea Theodore, I think, to right back now. But I think it makes it easier to upgrade their team, and I think they have the pieces to be able to get through it. I think it's going to ultimately set them better up for the playoffs, and that's what everyone really matters about.
Okay, now we're going to be talking a little bit later in the show about trade deadline moves and all that kind of stuff and what they could do. But Jack, I mean, how big of a loss is this? And then let's also throw in the mix. I mean, Carlson is out as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, a major loss. I'm talking about a guy that was having such a strong year this year. He's having a career season, jumping out as the Golden Knights' best defenseman and all that. And it's, somewhere they've had to fill holes a little bit more. The big thing that they've seen, too, is that they've been carrying 8 defensemen all year with King Korczak and Ben Hutton, I believe. Ben is his first name, Hutton's his last name. But it's been easy to really, cycle guys in and out like that and fill those gaps a little bit more. Obviously, you're losing a top guy, and that's a big thing. But they've had a lot of consistency with defense and stuff like that. Noah Hanfin's been able to move up. Alex Petrangelo's been pretty consistent. So the defense, believe it or not, has been their most stable part of their game overall this season. So it's a big loss, but it's been easy to fill here and there. And like Kay said, coming up to the trade deadline a little bit more, maybe this could be a spot that could fill a little bit. And then, talking a little bit about Carlson's injury as well. It hasn't hit too hard. Carlson hasn't been playing great this year. He's a piece that helps out a little bit more with stability, but getting him back would be huge. But getting that stability just in general would be big for them.
Yeah, and of course there's the financial maneuvering and all that stuff that Kelly McCrimmon can, kind of put into motion for the trade deadline, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But Ray, I mean, this is part of, the DNA, the championship DNA, and the attributes and the qualities we see of championship level teams. They have to be able to overcome obstacles and issues with injuries. I mean, we see it in every sport, it's part of next man up mentality. So could this actually work in, the Golden Knights' favor, perhaps, and have some guys step up as we're leading into the postseason?
So my colleagues with a very, very forgiving analysis here that the Golden Knights will be okay, that all the pieces are moving around. That may be true, and you're right. It could be a blessing in disguise where more players step up when given the opportunity and makes them stronger for the playoffs. But for me, the whole goal is to get that momentum going when you get into the postseason. And if you want to get hot, and if Shea Theodore's not back until the playoffs, if he can't get on the ice to get that rep, that puts that in peril. Additionally, he's one of your top 3 or 4 players. The others being Jack Eichel, who's been phenomenal this year, Mark Stone, who's always injured, right? So if you lose one more person to injury, now you're moving around all these parts, and now your third and your fourth lines could be impacted. And how does that help with the chemistry as you get your flow ready to the postseason? So it could be a blessing in disguise, could be a tragedy in the making. We'll see how they respond.
Or taking a hit just in terms of seeding and standings and where they're at.
You disagree with me. I hate that look. I see it in his face.
Like the Golden Knights, I think it's clear at this point. They've won the Stanley Cup. They've been one of the best teams in the NHL ever since they came in. The whole name of the game is get into the playoffs, and we'll figure it out from there. We're going to rearrange. They're going to be in weird seedings. I think you're placing too much importance in this last third of the season. They're going to be fine. Maybe they go 500, lose a little bit. They're in the playoffs right now. There's no doubt they could lose every game, and that'd probably be the only way they're not in the playoffs. They're going to be in the playoffs. They'll get it back together. I think that we're talking about 2 seasons here, and playoff hockey is just a different beast.
Wow.
I think there's some middle ground to it. I understand where you're coming
At least
from.
thank you.
From last year to the injury bug.
Off the cliff.
The injury bug was really bad last year. However,
Right.
it's not as bad as it is right now. You are missing some key guys right now. There is that aspect if it does come down later in the line. That's where they struggled in the playoffs last year. They struggled to get that chemistry going really quickly. But they are in a good position right now, and they have a good pace right now. But it's figuring out what's going to happen.
I mean,
They played the number 1 seed last year. The Stars, they kind of struggled last year, barely slipped into the playoffs. They're in such a position of strength right now. Color me not worried at all.
I mean, it's so unsettling to see you as, the optimistic one. I mean, what's going on here? It's like Freaky Wednesday here.
No, glass half full. We're very positive, No very negative. What was I, negative or positive?
You were more negative.
I was
Case was more
realistic.
Yes, it's
I'm
weird.
real. Case
Okay,
deals
really.
I deal in realism.
Listen,
Case, I can't speak.
if I had water in my Ed Bernstein mug right now, I'd be drinking it just to let you guys quarrel amongst yourself. But okay, guys, we got to go to the break because with Theodore and Carlson out, does GM Kelly McCrimmon need to make a move? Jack Williams is the first to give his take when we return. The NHL trade deadline is on March 7th. Last year, VGK made a splash acquiring Tomas Hertl at the trade deadline from rival San Jose. But this year, Jack, how active do you think the Knights will be at the deadline?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as crazy. This is, saying that ahead of time, this is a team that likes to make a lot of noise just in every aspect of everything that they do. So, Kelly McCrimmon could come up and make a, really big gain here at the trade deadline, stuff like that. But they're really in a position right now where there isn't too many pieces that need to be moved out or really moved in here. Everything's really consistent for them right now. Yes, you have the injuries and stuff like that. You could pull in a few more guys that are on contract to fill up those spots. But there isn't really anyone that really needs to be booted, in my opinion. Everything's really kind of working straightforward. You have a winning combination. Again, that injury bug's it's something you really can't prevent. But in my opinion, there just really isn't any reason to move. There's really no reason to force anything.
Okay, so you're saying nobody really needs to be booted, but what about acquiring? Is there, what piece case would you say this team needs,
We've been through this year after year after year. I love the philosophy. It's upgrade at all costs, and it might come at a cost of losing some guys here, but I expect them maybe not to be as active as last year. Last year they struck 3 pretty big deals. I mean, right now I'd set the total over under 1.5 deals, and I think that the same position we came into the year saying we thought they would address, I think they're ultimately going to do at the trade deadline. I think that was part of the plan. I think they need another winger. They have great defensive depth. I don't think they're worried about Shea Theodore being out. I think when he comes back, they're going to immediately go to one of the best defenses in the playoffs. They have all these great centers. I think they just need one more winger. Now the problem is this year's trade deadline doesn't look like there's as many big name pieces as maybe the last few years where you always see the Golden Knights be aggressive, but we've seen them make surprises before. We'll see what Kelly McCrimmon has up his sleeve here. Maybe he just gets one of these wingers that's available that the league's a little bit lower on. But I do think they will bring in a new winger, and I do think that they'll be active, maybe not as active as last year.
I mean, you're a betting man as well, Ray Brewer. If you were a betting man on this, what would you say happens at the deadline for VGK?
So I'm kind of aligned with Case where The Golden Knights going back, you're welcome. Going back to when they got Mark Stone from Ottawa, they are active at the trade deadline, and I think it's very important this year because you want to make that spark, right? You bring a new player in, the room thinks you're committed to getting this winner, to getting over the hump. And the player isn't to necessarily to only upgrade the wing or give you great depth in other positions. It's to give the room that spark that, hey, management thinks we have this team that can hoist the cup, and they're giving everything. Foley's the man. He's given us everything we need to get to the finish line. Let's go do it. Here we go. Rah, rah, rah. We got the team.
It's a good point. The cool thing I think about the Vegas Golden Knights and their DNA is like there's always that sentiment that they're competing, right? I mean, and that's what makes this franchise so special, not only for Vegas, but in the NHL in general, right? I mean, Jack, this is a team that's always competing for playoffs and for the championship.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Case, too, when hearing just about what they could gain a little bit more, especially on the wing, too, and adding maybe a little bit more of a prolific score on the wing, stuff like that. You know, Dorofeev and Barbashev have been a little on and off throughout the year, But yeah, like you said, this is a team that wants to compete in just every aspect of the game, whether it be off the ice, on the ice, whether it be making fans unhappy or happy and sending off players, bringing in players. This team finds ways to be competitive no matter what, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people around the league don't like them, because off the bat they've been just incorporated and just up there with everyone else. But yeah, this team will find ways to stay up into the top teams in the league.
It's true. Case, educate me and our audience a little bit, because the injuries also help in a certain sense with some of the salary cap manipulation, right, according to what they can achieve at the deadline. Could you kind of break that down for me and for our audience?
Well, I think the pessimist would say salary cap manipulation. The realist, as Brewer, I believe, called me or called himself, would say more, this is part of the rules. This is what's agreed upon. And when you can convert some of these players like a Shea Theodore to long-term injury reserve, that opens up his cap space, which he has a very nice big contract, one of the highest paid players on the Golden Knights. That gives you more room to acquire more players. I know I mentioned it last segment. I couldn't really bite my tongue for it. Then when the playoffs, all that comes off the books. There is no salary cap on the playoffs. So conceivably, if Shea Theodore's wrist heals, you can have him back on the playoff roster along with a guy or two that's filling the cap space that he would have here at the end of the season.
So you can push a little bit of that salary right now, give yourself some room to acquire another big name, and then when Theodore comes back for the playoffs, doesn't matter what that looks like.
So going to your initial question when we launched the show, was the Shea Theodore injury problematic and is Four Nations a problem?
Maybe it's...
the GM was doing cartwheels when it happened because he's like, listen, get the Brinks truck loaded. We're bringing in somebody. Here we go.
There you go. There's always a moment each show, and Ray Brewer just brought it right there. That's the moment we needed. Guys, more Sin City Beat is coming at you after these words. All right, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Heading into the second half of the season. Right now, VGK is at a pretty good spot, yet injuries loom over the team. Ray, I'm starting with you on this one. How deep is your faith in this team, and how far can this team go?
So my faith is pretty strong because they are top 5 in the league in points. They're going to have a lot of home games at the Fortress. You know, when you're wearing shorts on the strip to go into T-Mobile Arena in late May, you know good things are going to happen. I just think that home ice advantage is so paramount for this team, and it looks like they're going to have it. They're really tough to beat at home, especially in the postseason. And if they get everybody back healthy, and if they're able to manage the roster like we think they will, I think they've got live action to get hot to make a run.
Yeah, I think, home ice is certainly critical. There's been a lot of harmony, even though we have 3 Las Vegas Sun people here on the panel today, a lot of harmony. So let's see if something changes in this last block. Case, Jack, take a stab at this. Are we gearing up for another run at the Cup?
I've learned to never doubt this team. It's a tale as old as time, and I think this year is fitting with it. You look at them statistically, you look at any analytic, any metric you want, they're not as good as they've been performing. They're not a top 5 team in the NHL, not best in the Pacific Division I don't care what you look at, anything. They've kind of overperformed.
You're just saying from an eye test, kind of.
Yeah, from an eye test, just the straight standings. If you just look at the surface of it, like, oh, this is a Stanley Cup contender, it's a great team. I think when you dig a little bit deeper, they have more flaws than usual this year. But, I mean, this goes all the way back to the first year. This team, they have some magic sauce. Like, they have some really smart guys in smart places. They always overperform, so it's hard for me to totally count them out. But right now, I think be selling a little bit on Brewers level. I don't think they ultimately make the Stanley Cup final unless they just strike gold at the trade deadline. I think they've overperformed just a little bit to this point.
I mean, Case, just one more point there. How much, I mean, the identity of this team, so many of the critical faces and names that we were accustomed to were shipped out, at the end of last season. How big of a factor is that playing in maybe this eye test?
I mean, certainly I think that has something to do with it, but that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, that's the salary cap. When you win a championship, I mean, usually it's the next season everyone has to go. It's been 2 years now. They were going to have to make some changes. I think they've done a really good job staying at the top the best they can, but I do think they need another prolific scorer, and maybe he's already on the roster. Maybe Dorofeev or Barbashev can get back on track, who we mentioned last segment. One of those two guys. I think they just need one more guy who really you can rely on to come up big and score in these key situations.
Okay, Jack, I'm going to you last. Even though Ray Brewer says you're not a hockey guy to the level that I think you are a hockey guy. I don't care that you've never been in a fight, even when you played. What's your take? We got a minute left. How confident are you in this squad as we head into the postseason in a little bit?
Oh my gosh. So I'll agree with Case here. Standing in the moment, they need to be playing better consistently. I mean, they've been saved a lot. I don't know how they're still at the top of the Pacific Division when they've been playing so bad throughout the month of February and in January as well. They had such a strong December that's been moving up. Edmonton's been winning a bunch of games, then they lose a bunch of games. So at the top of the Pacific Division, things they need to be playing better, more consistently and stuff like that. However, this is a team that knows how to put it together late in the year and really go on runs deep into the season, into the postseason as well. However, doesn't feel too much about if they have that Stanley Cup touch this year. That could change going a little bit forward and stuff like that. I still think they have a good playoff run in them, but who's to know?
All right, we'll see what happens. Thank you to the Las Vegas Sun. Great panel. Ray Brewer, Case Kiefer, Jack Williams. I'm Mike Davis. We'll see you next time here on Sin City Beat. Go Knights Go. We'll see you next time.